surprise guests joining us in the middle of this thing. These are students. These are people who live, work, play, go to school on college campuses every single day that are in a variety of places in their sort of station of being a student. We got people from all over the country, and so very happy to have you here to hear from you directly, because we've been talking to placemakers for weeks now, but you're really the ones who make college campuses places people want to be. And so I want to start. It's a weird time. How are you guys doing? How's everybody feeling? What's happening?
I'm relieved.
You're relieved.
Say the least.
Relieved the semester's over, or relieved where are you relieved?
I'm relieved that the semester's over. It's definitely the way it ended, or the way getting off campus came, I was just kind of like, hit in a weird spot and the things I'm involved with on campus, it definitely contributed a lot to my transition back home. But now that the semester's over, like I feel like I can breathe, I can enjoy my time with my family, I can pick up new hobbies, things. I'm just relieved. Like it's like a breath of fresh
So
air.
you were in a place just waiting to get through the spring semester, make it to this little break and get it behind you. Is that where everybody sort of is?
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I would
I
say
think.
it's kind of like bittersweet for me. So I had
Mhm.
graduation, like I graduated, just a couple days ago, and having a virtual ceremony that was super interesting and something that, I never expected to happen. Like going into college, like I had pictured myself, crossing the
Yeah.
stage and like waving to my family. So that has definitely been the more like bitter part to it, but definitely sweet that I still got that degree.
Well, and we've got two recent grads, Michael and Sarah. You
Yeah.
both graduated this past weekend. Congratulations to you both. You finished your bachelor's degrees, but you missed out on the things that people normally do with graduation. We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. Uh, you finished the last month or two in a very very strange place. What are the things you feel like you missed that are absolutely heartbreaking that nobody should miss? And what are the things you were like, you know what, I didn't miss that? And maybe if we went back to a new normal that didn't have that, that would be okay.
I think the thing that I kind of missed was we had some other things lined up. We have a Spring Fest where it's similar to homecoming, where we get to have the concert and the artists and everything like that. Of course, I miss the students. When you're a student leader, you love being around the students. You love seeing everyone's warm faces. But at the same time, it was a great opportunity for me to really just kind of settle down and focus on myself and focus on the things I had to do. I think we're so used to being on go, 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 that we forget that we need to, worry about ourselves sometimes, because we're always ensuring that the university is good. And so I think, like Sarah said, it's bittersweet, or the quote that says, it's the best of times and the worst of times.
Mm.
But I think you just have to appreciate the goods and accept the bads. And I definitely miss having that feeling of walking across the stage and having my family there to see that. But a master's degree is loading, and so they'll have the
Yep.
opportunity to see me walk in.
Well, and you're right. You've got a master. All of you have brighter futures ahead of you than things that you have behind you, as accomplished as you are. And that's why I think it's so important to talk to you today, because as we talk about the future of higher education, you are the future of higher education. You all are going to be doing this work, and I think some of the decisions that people are making today are going to impact the reality that you land in. And so I love that you're here to sort of talk about this thing. Michael, you said settle and focus. You had some time in there while you're always worried about what's going on in camp. You had a little bit of time to settle and focus. Did that teach us anything about the structure of higher education, the structure of a college student's day, and is it sustainable, or are there things that we learned during this period of time that was very odd that maybe should change in the way that we have higher education structured?
I think really just understanding balance. That's a constant battle that I've struggled with, and I know many other college students struggle with. Where do you find the balance? Where do you find the time to get the work done, and also the personal time for yourself? And a lot of times we think we're good until we settle down. And we're like, man. And I even had a moment where after I came home, I was like, who am I? Like
Mm.
what is it that I really want to do? What is it that I really want to focus on? Do I want to go down the music route, or do I want to going to higher ed? And so I had some time to really think about what my next steps were going to be once I graduated. And I didn't really have that time um, during the year to kind of figure that out for myself, just because, like you said, I'm always on go. I'm always heading to a meeting or heading to class. But this was a great opportunity to really just understand that personal time is very much needed.
Mm. Anybody else?
Yeah, for me, it gave me quality time with myself. Again, like Michael said, I think a lot of times we're always on go. We don't really make time to have just a mental break and just come back to reality and say, hey, there's other things to life than social activities, being on campus, jobs. You have to take care of your mental health and your well-being. And I think that we've all had ample time the last 2 months to really focus on what matters to us in life, to pretty much put things in perspective to say, hey, from now on, what am I going to do better, and how am I going to be a better person, not to just the institution, not just to society, but myself as well. So that was the things I worked on.
Mm. So this notion of sort of getting centered a little bit and thinking about there being life beyond what's happening on a college campus. I mean, the structure of higher education, especially for an undergraduate, is built so that everything in your life is centered around campus, right? You live there, you eat there, you go to school there, your friends are there, everything is there. This breaks that down a little bit, right? Higher education is built on bringing people together, and this pandemic tore that apart. It took the model and turned it on its head. How important is all that being together time? And in a new normal, when we come back, is it critical that we're all together, all on campus, doing it the way we've always done it in the past?
It,
I feel like something's gonna have to give at some point. Like,
Mm,
I feel like students right now are thinking a lot about their health, and in addition to getting that social interaction. Like, I've talked to a lot of students who are very open to the idea of going back to campus, but they're like, if we're going back, there is gonna have to be some sort of modification to ensure, like, maybe social distancing guidelines are followed in some way, or like, because it, especially like I go to a very big school, so and we spend a lot of time together in big spaces. But I do feel like there is importance in being together and being with other students. Like, for me, this time has been a struggle because my major is it's a science heavy major, and not being able to go to office hours and like sit with the professor and be like, this is what I'm struggling with, like having to do a Zoom call and like trying to translate that was very difficult for me because it's something that's very hands on, and there's a lot of things within majors that are very hands on, like theater majors, hands on,
Mhm.
labs, hands on. So I feel like there isn't a way that we can't be on camp. I mean, there clearly we made it work, but I'm saying like something's going to have to give, and there's going to have to be some sort of middle ground where where we're both healthy and social.
So, so what is it, if you read all the literature in higher education right now, everybody's talking about how to get back to campus. From a student lens, are you eager to get back to campus? Are you not eager to get back to campus? And maybe it's too early to ask. A lot of you just finished some craziness. Or is it somewhere in the middle? I'd love to be back to campus, but only if it's a safe space for me.
Yeah, I love to be back to campus in a safe space. Me being a doctoral student, being around my colleagues, the library and everything around campus was our outlet. It
Mhm.
gave us opportunity to study. It gave us the opportunity to think about ourselves and our lives and how much work that we have in front of us. We all have prime-time jobs, all have families, but the campus was special. Special type of energy that Temple has, and it gave
Mhm.
us the opportunity to really bond with each other and just have a neutral outlet. And once you take that outlet from a person, it does something to them. Being inside of a house or just being inside of anywhere for so long, you miss the opportunity to grow within front of your eyes. Not saying that you can't grow inside, but just being around people, having the opportunity to network and gain a lot more knowledge and be knowledgeable about the institution. It kills you.
So what about you,
Yeah.
sir? You're going to a new institution. You're going to be traveling 1,000, 1,200 miles, something like that,
Mhm.
to go to a new
Mhm.
place that you don't have an emotional connection to yet. You don't have a
Mhm.
relationship with yet. You're a lot like our incoming freshmen that are coming into institutions all over the country that have said, "Hey, I want to go do this thing," but now there's something else, another barrier there, and it's about sort of your psychological safety. It's about how do you feel in terms of your health and wellness, and that thing that has to break, like Larissa said. How do you feel about going to a new campus with a whole new layer of safety added onto this?
Yeah, it definitely makes me a bit nervous. I've definitely had a couple breakdowns here and there just
Mm,
because I didn't actually even get the chance to visit Florida State University because of the pandemic. So I have never even been to the campus, which adds on another layer of kind of, stress and like worry. But, um, I'm also like, thinking in the positive that it will be a great experience, and it'll build onto my resilience and like my
mm,
adaptability skills, and I kind of tend to look at it that way so it doesn't make me as nervous. But I definitely am eager to get back on campus, and I'm eager to kind of, with Ryan said, like, make talk to my mentors, talk to my the administrators, talk to my friends. Like, I miss that so much. And I really felt that the last 2 months when I wasn't like physically on my campus at Illinois State University. Like I looked forward to waking up every morning and knowing that I was going to see my friends, knowing that I was going to see people who have had such an impact on my life. So I'm really like missing that and craving that. And I really hope that at Florida State, I will build those relationships. And I only think about like, man, how hard would that be if it was online? Like, are we going to be virtual,
Mm.
in the fall semester? And how, if that does happen, how are universities going to reach out to incoming freshmen
Mm.
or incoming grad students, or even just the retention of
Mhm.
the students that they already have? What are universities going to do to still
So,
provide that support?
well, and that's the $1 million question, right? Like at the end of the day, institutions of higher education, in addition to providing an education, by and large, they're in the business of building emotional connections to campus, right? Like getting you
Right.
invested, making sure that we're all part of something bigger than ourselves. You and Michael are in that spot right now where you're going to go to a new campus in the fall that you probably haven't even visited.
Yeah.
In a world where a lot of things have to be delivered differently, virtually, everybody's got to stay 6 feet away from each other. Everybody's going to wear a mask so you can't see people smiling at you. Like you imagine a lot of these guidelines that we're talking about to potentially even sort of halfway open. What could institutions do to make you feel emotionally invested or part of something bigger than yourself in that kind of reality, in that kind of world?
Uh, Man, that's a tough question. It's tough because I mean, even going back to the online thing that Sarah was talking about, we were a lot of universities were trying to move forward in the direction of going to online classes, and I think we've realized and understood that a lot of students desire to have that face to face interaction, and so universities have to find a way to create that personal connection, even if it's a personal Zoom call with your
Mm.
students. That would be good, but even as Larissa said, that's not enough sometimes. That
Right.
face-to-face interaction is so important and crucial to all students. It helps build those social skills, those soft skills that we still need to develop. And so I think as we continue to move further and continue to find a solution to this pandemic, I think keeping in mind that even though they say Generation Z and millennials are so high on tech, we're still desiring that in-person feeling and connection with our students and our professors.
And
Yeah,
we
I
and
think. Go ahead. Go ahead,
And we
Ryan.
also have to take consideration how many institutions are ready to be online altogether. How many can
Mm.
merge time with technology? And that will be a serious issue. A lot of schools are still on their own self-serve banner accounts, still using Blackboard, haven't transitioned to Canvas. So how many institutions are really ready to be fully online based? That's going to be a challenge as well.
Yeah, and Ryan, you kind of mentioned this earlier that, let's pretend there is a world where everybody has to be virtual in the fall, everybody.
Mm.
And now we have to have a serious discussion when it comes to emotional connection. What will institutions do in that world to differentiate themselves?
It's
What
going to
will,
be it's going to
right?
be it's going to be curious. It's going to be the survival of the fittest, because when you can't go out and recruit, you can't go out and speak to
Yeah.
students, you can't go out to use churches to interact. It's going to be a serious problem to see who really can keep students engaged. Will
Yeah.
students really go to universities that's cost efficient? Will students go to a situation where it's a university around the corner? Now we actually see how big is scholarly recognition, and what are these institutions doing to go above and beyond to bring these students back into the threshold?
So now we're getting into enrollment a little bit, right? We're getting into
Mhm.
how do you get the people you need to attend your institution? And I think there's been a huge focus nationally on freshmen for years now, right? The
Mhm.
population of, if you don't know this, the population of traditional college age students has been declining in the U.S. for a number of years, and we're off the cliff now. We're in the middle of an enrollment drought like this country hasn't seen in quite a long time, and we're going to be in it for a little while over most of the country. Knowing that, though, I think there's a really interesting twist to this, and that's the returning students. I think that's during this pandemic that we're seeing a real interesting bump. We're seeing a lot of returning students vocalize, and I'm generalizing, some challenges. What's your feeling? And you're all student leaders. You're all connected to undergraduate students and graduate students. What's your feeling about what this has done to students' loyalty to their institution? Has there been a hit there or a challenge there, or not?
I think, I'm not going to say all institutions, but there were a lot of institutions that treated their students poorly.
Correct.
And,
Mm.
you had a lot of students who were forced to move out, but you have to also take into account the students who don't have a home to go to, the students who come from a foster home, the students who are homeless or who don't have a good living situation. And so we have to really ensure that, the university should have ensured that there was something in place to ensure that students were safe and had somewhere to go.
Mm.
But there are well, on the other end, universities like my university, Kentucky State University, they did a wonderful job of ensuring that our students were safe and good to go. And so I won't say that all universities made poor decisions, but a lot of universities did, and it'll be interesting to see the impact.
They've given you the
Yeah.
diploma. But you can still say nice things about them. That's one. No, it's good. You're an alum now. Yeah. um, so, in terms of treating students poorly, one of the things that I read recently was a blog post from a professor who's essentially said, "Look, the jig is up on higher education. I'm teaching students online, and as good as my teaching is, we're charging full tuition for me to teach online. And what they're realizing is that the portion of their tuition that pays for my teaching is this much, and the rest of it is all frisbee in the quad and food in the union and hanging out with your friends in the events and student services and things like that." Do you get that feeling? And if you do, what does that mean in terms of how you feel about the way higher education is treated, sort of handled this whole thing?
I mean, for me as a student leader, that was like one of the things at the forefront of the discussion from students was like, what's Temple student government going to do about, getting refunds and all of these things. And like, I feel like Temple did a great job. You know, they even gave refunds for course fees,
Outstanding job.
um, um, housing, meal plans. Like
Mhm.
a lot of schools did not offer that, and that the fact that Temple even was like, yeah, this is what's happening was like outstanding. But the fact that more students were like, all right, where's my money for university fees, which is about like 400 something a semester. So it was just like students were like, that money, like all this money I'm paying for these online classes, what is it going to? And a lot of students are realizing that they're like, these services aren't being used. But I had this cool lens where I was able to talk to some administrators, and they were attempting to break down the numbers, and it was kind of
Mm.
interesting to sit in that middle ground. And I also have another weird perspective where my father works for the institution, so I'm also getting his perspective and like how they're handling it for them and how they're handling it for students. So at the end of the day, it's like it's just seems like it's just money, but like it's so many moving parts in the way that things are paid for. Um, and like I'm not saying I would not love a nice little refund as much as the next student, especially right
Yeah.
now since students, a lot of college students weren't even eligible for stimulus checks. Like it's just kind of like that money would be helpful in a time like this.
And Sarah, do you feel torn at all? Do you feel that like, hey, I now know what I pay for and where my money goes, and I struggle with that a little bit, but I also understand that my institution has to sustain itself, and I've got this loyalty there. Do you feel that being torn?
Oh yeah, so sitting on the board of trustees, I definitely have seen like both sides of the coin where it's, hard because I'm the sole student like representative that, it's like all about student fees and they're looking at me, for like, well, what are the students feeling? And, I see that part where it's like I also, with the help of like my single mom put myself through
Mm.
college, like
Mhm.
worked 3 jobs in order to get my degree, so of course I want that refund check, but also sitting on the board, you see like the impact and the money that we've lost because, of like refunding our students, and our university did a great job too of getting the student fees back and all of that. But, thinking like in the future, like how will that impact like our student resources, our, student counseling services? Like
Mhm.
we still, kind of like what Larissa was saying, we still need that money to be sustainable for in the future. So I definitely do feel torn on both sides.
And so the pandemic's really pulled back the curtain a little bit on the finances of higher education, and maybe
Correct.
even more so the financial challenges in higher education, the
Right.
complexity behind how your money goes in and how it's utilized and how it's spent. Knowing that now, you're in the perfect position because you're not too far removed from it. You're right in the middle of it, but you know enough information. What advice would you give an incoming freshman about
Read.
read about one, how relevant is higher education right now? How relevant is it? Are we preparing people for work? Are we doing the things we need to do for them to come out the other end? And is the return on investment there? Is it worth it at the end of the day?
It's still relevant. I believe that
Mhm.
students have really had time to think about it and reflect. They're going to be some readers. I know back in time, only people that read budgets were SGA students, but
Mhm.
now
Right.
multiple students, all students, will be able to read these
Yep.
budgets and see exactly what's going on at these colleges and universities. And one thing that I've learned, I think a lot of students have learned, the power of academics and the power of a degree. When you take away the pandemic, takes away entrepreneurships, it takes away restaurants, it takes away athletes, it takes away being on college campuses, but it doesn't take away online technology and to be able to teach on campus and teach around the world with a college degree. So that still makes higher education relevant. And there are so many things that you can do with those degrees if we had to continue the pandemic to another semester.
Mm.
And even going off of that, the college experience is just that one in a lifetime experience that
Right.
students need to have. Being on campus, being away from home, meeting people and network, learning how to network. Those are the things that are important. And so I would tell any college student, what you put into it is what you get out of it. Some of my best experiences and some of my best learning opportunities were outside the classroom. But then that goes back to the fact of how do we take what we learn in the classroom and apply it to what's in the outside world. And so I think we could always do a better job at looking at how do we utilize these skills that we're learning in the class, and utilize them outside the classroom.
Anybody else on the return on investment?
I mean, I haven't graduated yet, so I haven't fully seen that
Yeah, you're in
return
the
on
middle of
investment.
it.
I'm literally in the middle of
Yeah.
it. Yeah. I'm just like, I'm ready to finish out my senior year, but I know that's going to look a lot different now with everything. And with it being like my senior year, like going into my senior year, I had a lot planned for this summer that were networking opportunities that I received through the institution. And now those are, gone because of the pandemic. But as a whole, like as being a student leader and seeing how impactful like that college experience is, like I would say like I would urge so many people just to get involved and still like seek that college experience. Something I have heard a lot and I do agree with is that if we do move to online learning in the fall, a lot of students are considering like just doing community college credits because it's cheaper. And if that's the case, like I support it considering that
Yeah.
you're not getting that same return on investment of being on a college campus.
And do you think
So
that decision is different for an incoming student versus a returning student? Do you think as a returning student, you've got a different level of investment than an incoming student who might say, look, I can go to community college or I can do some online credentialed program that will then transfer in when this thing all goes back online? Do you think there's different ways of making that decision right now?
I think there's definitely different ways. I feel like a lot of like the first year experience is kind of being on campus. And I feel
True.
like if they're not getting that, it's less what's the word? It's less appealing to
Mhm.
to be on college campus and pay that money for it.
Mhm.
Whereas like I'm a junior, I've been at Temple for 3 years, I'm going into my fourth year, and it's going to be harder for me to go to a community college and finish up my senior credits because that's not going to transfer, matriculate the way it's supposed to. So it's definitely like that decision's a little bit different for sure.
Mm. So you've all done a good job of talking about the things you miss, right? You've talked about the social interaction and your friends and the comfort that comes with that, and being in a place, and we talk about placemaking. What does it mean to belong to some place? What are the things you don't miss? What are the things that during your day as a college student or a graduate student that you go, you know what? I've learned that that's probably not really necessary.
I
I
would oh,
Go ahead, Sarah.
sorry, Michael. I would definitely say, well, it was kind of what Michael was saying was like the constant, meetings like back to back to back,
Yeah.
like being a student leader. Like my days would start at 8 in the morning and I wouldn't get back to my apartment till like 9 p.m.
Mm.
It's like a full 12-hour day. And I really learned in the past 2 months, like, maybe those meetings, some of them could have been emails, that we used to have like in the like pre-COVID, like you could have emailed me about that instead of taking an hour, and missing lunch sometimes because I had to be in that
Mhm.
meeting. So it's like learning more about, self-care and finding even my love for like being outside again and being, just a little
Mhm.
bit more easy with myself and knowing that it's okay to, not constantly be on the go, and there's nothing at all wrong with that. Like I don't miss, that constant pressure, I think.
Eh, Go ahead.
Also class time, team. Thinking about the class time, 2.5, 3 hours as a doctoral student. All the Zoom calls have been under 30 minutes. If you learn
Right.
so much just
Yeah.
being in that environment with your
Mhm.
professors and also those students, why do we have to be in class so long? Those could be used for study hours. You can be
Yep.
used to spend time with family. It can be used to
Right.
be having potential internships or externships, or just to
Mhm.
be thinking about next level steps. So just shortening class periods.
There was a great article a couple weeks ago that talked about why is the measure of competence a credit hour, a unit of time, right? Meaning,
Mhm.
if you spend this much time, that means you're competent in the thing, and you get the grade, and you get this class behind you, and that builds up over time and equals a degree. Why is it not about mastery and skill? And why aren't you moving at your own pace?
Mm.
So that's really, really interesting. So I want to continue to go off of what you were saying, though, Sarah, that we as an industry, and I'm generalizing, have tried to kind of be all things to all people, and just
Mhm.
almost overwhelm students with the number of opportunities and experience and the bureaucracy and the meetings and the everything else. How can we pivot that to be more effective?
I That's a great question.
You're,
I That one got me
you
stuck.
would, yeah.
I feel like it's so hard because on campus, it's like I'm a type A type person where I'm always on the go. I'm always on the move. It's like it's like having those resources and being able to use them like at full capacity. I feel like that's me being effective. But like Sarah was saying, being home and being able to just like be with my family and have family dinner and like take time and actually like sit down and study. It definitely has opened my eyes to like how much time I am spending on, this goal. Um, so I guess in effectiveness, it might be just kind of sitting down and being like, what's an email and what's worth a meeting. I feel like that's
Yeah.
purely it. Like
Yeah.
if it's me sitting down and you're telling me like these are the events I need to like this is a plan for something, I can get that in email. Just tell me what I need to do and
Yeah.
I'll do it. But if it's like something a lot more in depth, or if it's like a planning or a budget, something where I do need to sit there, I will sit there. But no, yeah.
Yeah, higher ed is notorious for taking emails and making them into meetings, and now taking
Mhm.
emails and making them into Zoom calls, right?
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
Right.
well, so I mean, are there, like, we could probably, this is me conjecture, could we leave behind lecture classes? Could we leave that behind and deliver that in a different way and allow you to do it on your own time and focus more on the in-depth lab experiences or in-depth office hours or the in-depth mentorship experiences? Should higher ed start to skew that direction?
Yes, and it's always about the professor as well. How is
Yeah.
the professor bringing
Right.
this language, this dialogue, this energy to you in a way that you
Mhm.
can actually comprehend? For instance, if you have a Mark Lamont Hill, um,
Mm,
one of my professors and one of the most intelligent people I ever met, and he can just actually just control the entire room in 30 minutes and leave you with so many more facts about life that's special. So now the actual administrators and the professors have to step their games up to keep students' attention more than 30 minutes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, go.
I would definitely say it, like, kind of piggyback off that. It definitely depends on the class
Yeah.
itself, because
Mhm.
there are some where, like, um, again, hearing student feedback as a student trustee, like, there was a lot of classes that did go, all our classes went online, but there were some that were ineffective being online because
Mm,
the professor just kind of uploaded the slides and then they were
Mhm.
on their own with
Mhm.
the assignments. And I don't think that that is good, but there was some professors that would do like voiceovers, or, you had scheduled Zoom meeting calls with them. And
Mhm.
I think something like that where it still is interactive to a certain, extent would be super beneficial for some of those, long 3-hour lecture
yeah.
classes.
Mhm.
Speaking from a, I'm sorry.
No, go.
Speaking from a music major, from an artistic perspective, that in person, time is invaluable. Me and my voice teacher, we were having lessons over FaceTime, but he couldn't really critique what I was doing or what he could see over FaceTime. And so I think though sometimes like the lecture may not need to be as long as 1 to 3 hours, but I think still that in person time is good for, depending on what your major is or what your area is.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you think we've learned anything about the access to education, the digital divide, students that do have means and access and students that don't during this time? You're shaking your head like violently.
Yes.
What do yeah.
Yes. I feel like that was like the biggest thing that popped up in my head was like accessibility, like students who don't have like my dad had to up the broadband and my mom and I were just talking about how like that's such a first world problem for us to sit here and be like, we don't have enough Wi-Fi for all
Yeah.
4 of us to be in here on Zoom calls. So then like for us to have that conversation, what about a student who's like, I don't even have a computer? Whereas like they're going to the library and renting out laptops to to ensure that they're, or going to the tech center. Like there's students who really utilize those resources, and for us to transition like completely to online and for those resources to be taken away, it's
It's gonna
like
be tough.
it's very tough. And it's like it's the same thing happening. That's the same conversation happening with public school systems. Students who don't have like they're expecting students to finish out the academic year, but students don't not all students have computers. Like
Mhm.
some students
Yeah.
like it's definitely like accessibility was already an issue, whereas like students even being able to step on a college campus, but then to take it a step further and for them to be like, I'm home, but I can't even access
Yeah.
my own education. It's like
Do you think some of those elements are built into the physical campus though? That just by virtue of having a physical campus, you level the playing field at least a little bit in terms of access and technology and tools and resource and sort of being at least on a little bit of a level playing field and being part of something bigger than yourself?
for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think about the students who have learning disabilities,
Mhm.
how they're affected during this time, because they may not have the resources at home to receive help. They may not have, that peer that was helping them in class, and so I think we have to take those
Mhm.
into consideration as well.
And
Yeah.
Great.
also for Temple, we just built a brand new facility for
Right.
research and technology and like over millions of dollars. Probably even more expensive than that, but we can't even use it. How many students I've seen it packed each and every night.
Yeah.
To take away those resources, it really puts a sour taste in students' mouth.
Mhm.
So I'm hearing loud and clear from each and every one of you, college campuses will come back. We can't just leave them in the dust. We've got to continue to do the special things that we do on campus. It is about the experience. It's often about what happens outside. And it is about that emotional connection you have to campus. And I know that and believe that's the reason I do the work that I do, is because I've had that beautiful experience at my undergrad, my master's, and even in my doctoral work, that I have an emotional connection to places. And that's why I think placemaking is so important. With all that said, we know everything is going to come back. I, I tend to hope that something will come back in a little bit of a different format, that we always learn lessons, right? Let no
Mhm.
crisis go to waste. What can we learn from this? What are the opportunities that come out of us spending this time away from campus and in this odd space and learning what's important to us? What do you hope the opportunities are on the other side of this for higher education? I'd like to hear from each of you.
I
I
think.
want. Oh, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead,
Ryan.
Oh,
Ryan.
wow.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh,
They're ready.
I,
Everybody's jumping. That's
yeah.
good. That means
Yeah.
everybody has an
I
idea.
I think I can speak for a lot of students. Administration has to be ready to be challenged.
Mm.
A lot of administration have the opportunity to, check emails when they want to, roam around the campus, not really be responsive to students. But now when you have hundreds of emails from students that's fully engaged about student population, student budget, retention questions, where they're going to be staying on campus, the administration has to be ready. So this is a good time for each and every one of them to have a backup plan from A to Z on how can they fully assist students and assist institutions moving forth.
It's funny because I've always had the contention, Ryan, that higher education is wildly overstaffed between the hours of 8 and 5 and wildly understaffed in all the other hours, right? We take our junior, most frontline staff and let them run Disneyland in the middle of the night.
Correct.
And it's unfortunate because a lot of time the most student need comes out at those times. And what did we learn about the nature of work during this time, about how to make people available, how to use tech to make people available, how to create a results-oriented workplace? workplace that really serves the need instead of a policy-oriented workplace. So that really resonates with me. Somebody else, what else? What do we hope the opportunities are? What do we take away?
I
I
think. Go ahead, Laura.
no, go you this time, Michael.
I think even in the mind of student affairs, I've seen a lot of programming done through Instagram and through Facebook Live and through Twitter, and so it makes you think that okay, there are different ways to do things that we've always been doing, and so it's that constant reminder of okay, we can still grow. We don't need to have all this money to maybe do all these events, and students are enjoying, a live DJing party at home on Zoom or Ox Core Wars. And so I think it challenges student affairs to say, okay, we can do things differently and with less resources than we have. And so
Mm.
maybe that can help us to move some money somewhere else to help students. And so I think it's definitely challenging student affairs for sure.
I love that perspective. We talked a little bit earlier about student affairs, and Liz Gross, actually a good friend of mine, somebody who I adore, had tweeted some stuff about reducing staff in student affairs. She got a little bit of heat for it, but essentially this notion was, look, we're going to have to be more efficient and more effective. And one of the things we talked about earlier is this idea that student affairs and student services is moving towards this shift toward social support, right? Student insecurity around food, around housing, counseling centers, things like that. And so how are we structuring our operations to be able to serve those needs without increasing the cost of higher education? I think that's a phenomenal point. Sarah, you're ready. Go.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I am so passionate about the importance of student affairs, and I think that our COVID-19 has really shown us like the importance of the resources that a university provides, whether that is, from having like, housing to having access to the library to having access to our student counseling services. Like, I, really see even more in a different lens, like how much, that the importance of that is. And I think that we just need to continue working and continue improving on, ways that we do programs, ways that we do, even having like student counseling via like telenet or telehealth, where you have that access
Mm.
to be able to reach out to more people. I think that is huge. People, we have students all over the country right now, and they're still able to get those counseling resources and things
Mhm.
like that. So I think just continuing to improve and continuing to do more research on how we can really be a campus that serves all students, no matter where they are in life.
Should
Yeah.
should we be should we try to be all things to all people, or should we be our unique thing that we are to a wider variety of people? Like, go a little further on that.
I would say, so every so to me, every university has a different population. Every
Mhm.
university serves a different group of folks, and I think that every university needs to reevaluate the community that they serve and the student population that they serve, and be more like geared towards that, if that makes sense. Like, they need to
Differentiation.
really,
Mhm.
yeah, really
Yeah.
reevaluate like
And
who they're serving.
I
Yeah.
think something that we've learned is that online isn't necessarily bad, but in person is still needed. I think
Mhm.
about the people who have to work full time, who can't attend a class, who may need an online class, or the people who are in the military, who have to do online classes. But at the same time, those traditional students still need that in person experience. And so balancing how do we meet the needs of the ones who need the online classes, but how do we still support the needs of the people who need the in class class?
Right. And should every institution really be online? Should every
Mhm.
institution be face to face? Should every institution have a college of education? Should every, that when I think of differentiation, I think about what niche can we fill that does a good job of serving a specific population in the best way humanly possible. So those are good, interesting questions. Larissa, close us out. What's the big opportunity? What should we take away?
For me, the big takeaway I think is prioritizing health. For me, health means more than just like your physical. It's your physical, it's your mental, it's your social, it's your economic. Like, as a university, as an institution, we should be prioritizing students' health. And especially if we're planning to transition back to campus, students are coming back with a lot of experiences. And
Mhm.
um, from being home, from moving off campus to this being their first year, like there are so many different experiences that are going to impact a student's health. So as an institution, like this is an opportunity to really just kind of, where can we support students and ensure that they are living healthy, both on the standard of like the CDC and the World Health Organization, but also like as a person, as a human, getting that social interaction, getting
Mhm.
that, being economically sound, being mentally sound, being physically sound. How can we ensure students are just staying healthy as a whole?
You all are absolutely brilliant. Usually, I would say no podcast is good after 30 minutes, but that would be a lie when it comes to this group right here. I could talk to you all night long. I appreciate you spending this evening with me, and there's a lot of lessons learned. I hope you'll join me in the future. I'd love to bring you back together as we learn more about this pandemic and where higher education is going to go in the future. And by then, Sarah will be in a whole new town. Michael will probably be in a whole new town, and we can kind of revisit and see where we are in the future. For all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. And please come back next week for another episode of The Placemakers. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you guys.
you.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks. Take
All right.
care. Bye.
Hang out for 1 minute with me. Everybody left me.
Oh, I was
How
assuming
about
we were
they
supposed to wait.
stay on?
It's okay. We can wait a minute. YouTube is probably down at this point. It
Mm.
should be. Diamond will confirm for me. You guys were awesome. Thank you.
guys.
Fun.